Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Low Code Cafe. This is episode number 144 for September 6, 2023. I'm Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantain App. I'm joined today, Patrick Anderson, Technical Success Manager for Plantain App. Today, we're going to do part 4 of our custom form building exercise. And so we'll dive into that in just a moment, but first, let me do a little bit of introduction. This is Low Code Cafe is an event we do twice a month, bi-weekly, that happens on Wednesdays at this hour. And it's an event where we update you with what's going on with Plantain App, do some demonstrations, and then spend the largest part of our time on hands-on low coding. We invite you to be our guest speaker. Some of our best episodes have been when we've had guest speakers showing off what they've accomplished with Plantain App and showing off a little bit the applications that have been built. These episodes are recorded and they're available out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/plantainapp. Today we'll be running our simplified agenda. I'll be talking a little bit about topics from the trenches of support and then go right on into hands-on low-code development. Our next live episode is scheduled for September 20th. And so with that, from the trenches, this time we're currently using version 1.25 of Plantain App. And we have released 36 hotfixes to date. There are no hotfixes coming out in this period, so you're not missing out on a thing. We are internally under discussions to release our version 1.26. It's been a long time coming. We've slowed down our release cadence a little bit to focus on quality and stability. And so we are now evaluating the features that are in this release, and we'll be talking more about them, I would expect, in the next episode. Just an ongoing caution, our current release has not been tested with DNN 9.12, so I encourage you not to upgrade to DNN 9.12 on a production instance. And if you do, we know that there are some people that have done this and have gotten into high CPU usage scenarios. So it's definitely a caution. Reach out to support if you have more questions about that. We also encourage you to engage in the Low Code Campfire. This is an event we do with the community every Friday at 10 a.m. Central. And this is where we get together and talk about Plantain App and the experiences that you're encountering with the product, and oftentimes between our support team and the members that show up from our community, that lots of problems get solved or ideas get generated. So it's really a very useful hour to spend. If you can't do it every week, jump in from time to time. It's really a good community. And then I'll ask Patrick here in a moment to post the links for this episode, but we have an opportunity. We have the links so that you can join the Low Code Campfire, that you can get to our webinar recordings, take advantage of our community portal, which has lots of great opportunities, whether it's getting your questions answered or signing up for free live help. We run a couple of those sessions every week. So very good opportunity to get some one-on-one time and get issues solved. And then we'd love to hear your feedback. So all those links are coming on the clipboard here shortly. And with that, we'll dive right into part 4 of our building custom forms. Just as a kind of a recap, this is the 4th the episode. The prior episodes were where we, in episode 1, we started from the very basics, the beginnings, placing a form, quick introduction to settings, understanding how fields are created and placed on the form, started with button events. In our next episode, part 2, we started to introduce different types of fields that you could use to get information from your users, and making buttons to make your forms more interactive, and kind of an introduction to some of the common properties so that you understand the pattern of what you'll see within Plantain App, how fields are defined, how actions are defined. In our last episode, part 3, we went into even more field types and then started working on data manipulation, how to create, read, update, delete records from entities. So just a quick review of all that stuff. We have common field properties. And so when you're looking at the form builder, fields like title and show conditionally, enable conditionally, short description, you'll see these on almost every field type that you'll define within forms. And so we talked about how to use those, what they're good for. We talked about how to use tokens. So tokens are essentially variables, information either that we provide. Core tokens are typically information that we provide you. For example, the get token, the ability to get a parameter off the query string, and a little bit about how you might use that, like setting an initial value based on the name parameter of the query string. So that was covered in earlier episodes. We also talked about common field sections at the bottom of every field. You'll typically see these 3 sections. There's a bind expressions, a UI settings, and validation. And so that's a common pattern that you'll see in various field types. And so that you can use those to help for example, bind will help your form to become more reactive based on the values that are being entered into it. You can show and hide certain things based on conditions within your form. The UI settings lets you style things and provide CSS classes so that you can make your form fit within the design of your site. And validation, being able to check the data before actually clicking the submit button. So requiring, for example, that a field be filled in before the form can be submitted. So that's common stuff. We talked about all these different kinds of field types, and field types are determined as you add a field to a form. You'll get a drop down, and you can pick from a wide variety of field types. And note that even when you're looking at a field type, you'll see that you can get a drop down. So it's possible once you've put a field on the form, you can change its type. You might have to do a little bit of extra work after the fact, but to just making sure that all your parameters apply, or that the new parameters that are revealed by the different field type is that those are filled in or set to your specifications. But it's possible to change a field type. As I'm looking at this list, I'm reminded that there are a number of field types that will show up with the word obsolete after them. Our product is, the action form has a history going back 10 years, and there's a lot of things that we've done over the years, things that have been replaced by other field types, things like that. So if you see something that's obsolete, your best bet is to find a different field type to use and avoid the ones that say obsolete. Those will not be available in future versions. So that's the warning that you'll see when things are marked obsolete. We also talked about creating tokens or variables. So these would be not the ones that we provide, but rather ones that you create. So for example, you can use the create update tokens action to create a token, in this case called source statement, and have it get a value. The token value is either from context, from the letters that you type, or from other variables that exist. So in this case, we used it to come up with a source statement saying that the constant, this listing comes from the source, and we inserted the source from the command line, from the URL, the get source. So context tokens, that source statement then is a variable that can be used elsewhere in later parts of your form. And then we started working with data. We created a sign-up entity and provided a lot of properties like name and email address. And this creates a data table that will store your data, but it also creates lots of actions that make it convenient to create and read and update and delete those as needed by your application. So we talked about entities, and then for example, the type of actions, we did some working with data, and we created a new sign up, and we used the create new sign up action that was created when we did an entity. So when you do a create new sign up, you fill in all the blanks, all the different properties of that entity are presented, and you can fill them in with variables, tokens. So in this case, name and email address and years of experience tokens are used to fill in that thing. So that was the beginning of working with data. So now on to new content, and this maybe could have been something that I could have done in episode 1, but just to introduce, now that you started to see forms, you'll start to see that our forms tool is kind of a Swiss Army knife of web development tools. If you're going to input or display information, and we'll talk about these different cases here in just a minute, but it's a great way to present or collect information and to do processing, and it just has a great deal of capability that you just need to harness. And so it is a big multi-purpose tool, and one that's worth your investment and time to understand. So our forms tool can be used in a variety of ways, and just to give you some idea, there's kind of a transient form, a form that would be used to collect information and process it in one step. For example, a contact us form. You'd be able to put in, there's very little complexity behind this. You're collecting some information, and they push a button and you're going to do something with it, and then that's the end of the process. So a nice one-step thing. That's one use. But another use is a data entry form, something that results in a record getting added to a table somewhere. A data update form is one that can be used when you've got a record and you want to edit it. And so that's a very common use of it. And one that we're going to be talking about and focusing on today, this use case of partial data entry. So and this gets into why you need to understand how to do custom forms versus the ones that are created automatically for you when you create entities. When you create an entity and we create a form, we create the ability to add and edit and delete data from that form. But the form is designed to do, it's very record centric. It's focused on the data of that one record. But oftentimes you have an issue where you want to get information from someone that has pieces of the information but not the whole thing, and maybe you only want to give control or the ability to change very limited pieces of the information. So we have a great use case for that, and that's what we're going to spend the most of our development time on today. So you can use a form to display information and get approval or rejection, and so that's a use case. Another is having to do with a form can be used to control the user experience. So one of the common things you might see in Plankton app is to have a filtering form. So if you have data that's being displayed using another of our tools, the listing has a great deal of capability built into it to be able to limit and change the way that your information is displayed. But sometimes you want to take direct control of that, and so creating a form that does filtering exactly the way that you want it to is a valid use of creating a form. And so now that form is controlling the listing. So controlling user experience is a reason. Another common use case would be e-commerce, like you're collecting information related to an order. So it's not necessarily going the use case might span a number of different data tables or entities. think in terms of you have to put in your billing information and your credit card information and your physical address, but also line items. What are you ordering and what colors and things like that. So that information is going to span a lot of different tables, and so the default things that we provide to you as a result of creating entities is not sufficient to that job. And then another very common use, and some of these are all kind of mixed in together, but control. So somebody fills in a form and then you're going to send them on to the next step or send them elsewhere or do something for them. And so that's the control aspect, another reason why you might use a form. But lots and lots of different uses. And then there's, when does a form get activated? Well, sometimes things are activated on demand. You have your website and you have a contact us form, and people can just go to it anytime they like and fill in a contact form and hit the button. But other times forms are part of a normal job flow. You have a user that's doing some predefined task, and the form comes up just as in the course of they're going from one thing to the next, and so that's normal job flow. Sometimes it can be triggered by communication. You could send out an email, and the email could have a link in it, and the email then that link activates the page. Your form pops up, comes up, and gets done. And then another case would be that another way that might get activated is by pop-up. You're working on something, you click something and a form pops up and does a particular job or collects a piece of information, displays more information. So it can pop up and then just as quickly go away. So lots of different ways they can be used. And then there's some, so that's, with that now, I just wanted to identify some common patterns that always happen with forms, or at least are available for you, and you need to think about them a little bit. So forms can get initialized. When a form displays, perhaps like a contact form, it just comes up empty, and so you don't have to worry too much about initialization. It just comes up empty. But you may want to go out and get some data or do things. So there's an opportunity before the user interacts with the form to initialize it and do things. Then you have your entry fields. So anything that you've left enabled, any fields that are available for users to fill in, they can fill them in. You might reveal things as a user progresses. So for example, if your purpose is to do an employment application, you might ask some preliminary questions, and then based on those answers, allow them to proceed. For example, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Yes. Well, perhaps you don't offer them the opportunity to move on into your application. Versus no, it now reveals more information and brings them deeper into your process. Forms can be used, you would typically do rather data validation. Most of the time you want to make sure that the data that's coming in from users is clean, so data validation. When they click a button, you're typically going to want something to happen. In our case, in our example so far, we've been sending out emails, but you may want to interact with a remote system. You might want to save data. You might want to record what it is that they've done. So there's lots of processing that can take place. Typically, another form pattern that's normal is advancing to the next step. So somebody completes a form, and now what? Where do you want to dump them? What's the next thing that they should be looking at? Maybe they stay at the same form and just use the same thing over and over again in the course of their job, but maybe the form does one piece of a multi-step process, so you would advance them to the next one. And then, as we talked about, a form might impact other user interface kinds of things, like a form changing the way that a listing displays. So those are common patterns, and you can recognize them and use forms to do any and all of those. Okay, so now onto the fun stuff, doing some actual development. In our application that we've developed, we have people applying to be on a mailing list or asking to join a mailing list. And to date, what we've done is ask them a number of questions, and then we send off an email that goes to our system administrator. And the assumption originally was the system administrator is going to put them on the mailing list. In our last episode, we actually created the sign up entity and put them on the mailing list automatically. But maybe we have a business case that says that not everybody gets to be on the mailing list. So they fill in the form, it's added them to the list, but perhaps we put them in an unapproved state or a pending approval state, and then the administrator looks at the answers to their questions, maybe does external research, and then decides whether or not to add them to the list. So that's our business case today. The couple of options that are available to you, and there's always many ways to approach a business problem, but I've put out two here. So one would be that you could opt for a very simple solution where the standard forms and listings that we create for you would be where your administrator would go to approve them. And that requires very little effort, but it does require, it has some characteristics that might work in your business scenario, and it might not. And so you can evaluate. I can do no development and just point the administrator to these forms, or you might go with option 2, where you want to do a custom form that shows the mailing list information that the user has provided and only lets the administrator do something very limited. They can approve or deny, but nothing else. And so this kind of a scenario takes more effort. You have to define a custom form, but it gives you ultimate control. So your administrator, for example, won't be able to change the user's information. Their answers are not available to them. So they can't change the name, for example, or fix the email address. They can only say yes or no. And so as a developer, this gives you far more control over the experience. So let's take a look at both of those. The first one, as I implied or mentioned, it's all kind of built in, so we can do that one very simply. So this was our form, and that we custom we've done in each of the past episodes. And I am going to, in a new tab, open the configuration tab and take a look at our entity. The entity for this is sign up, and so I'm going to use the search to get right to it, and I'm going to edit it to take a look at it. So as we pointed out before, it has these 3 sections: general and properties and permissions. We're going to take a look at the properties because we are going to want to have an approval status as part of this, and it's not part of it yet. So we'll add a new property, approval status. And just for simplicity, there's lots of different ways to define this, but for simplicity, I am going to define this as a text field, and it's just going to have the value of blank when it's new, and it'll either get moved to approved or rejected, approved, declined, something like that. So with that one change, I'm going to save it and choose the override option. The override option tells Plantain App that you want all of our created content, the create, read, update, delete forms, to get updated to include that new, whatever changes that you've made, get to include them automatically. So we'll let it generate. And then as soon as that's generated, we'll browse out to that page, and we'll cover this option 1, that the standard create, read, update, delete functionality is going to be used to approve a request. And it finishes, and it tells us all the different things that it did. This field that pops up, this form that pops up is informational, and whether it shows all green check marks or something else, it's usually very not actionable on your part. It's just informational. So we've made that change. I'm going to search again for, or actually we can, yeah, I'm just going to search for it. There's always lots of different ways to do things, but we have our signups. And while I edited it a moment ago, I'm going to use the view page in new tab. So the system knows automatically where to go, how to link us to the page where this is on. And so we see the default functionality. There's the ability to create a new record. And if we look at that new record, we'll see that our new field, the approval status, is part of it. And so it appears down here. And if we were to use the edit button, the approval status is also there. And so in a manual sense, and this could be done again much better, perhaps using drop downs or things like this, but we could make it where the manager's job is to go in and type approved, so that an application becomes approved or denied the ability to be on a listing. And so that's becomes very manual, but the work as a low-code developer is done. You just turned on the field and it's there, and you don't have to do anything. But we're going to do the more interesting case where we're going to do a custom form to display the request and to provide that limited just approve or deny kind of thing. So here we go. In order to do that, it's going to look like this. We're going to have a custom form that displays their request and provide a limited actions. So it's going to have the changes that we're going to have to make to our system means that the email that we now send to the administrator is going to have an approval link in it. We're going to have a form that displays all the relevant information. It's going to have a couple of buttons, one to approve, one to deny. And then we'll let the form, when they click that button, the approval or the denial will trigger an email going out to the user, the person who signed up, to know that they're on the list. So when we do a custom form, you got to do a little planning. What is this going to look like? Well, we're going to have to create a page where this new form is going to live. It's going to have to, that page is going to have a URL, and that's the URL that we're going to put in our email that goes out to the administrator. And so we'll have to update that email, and then obviously we have to build the form that's going to display that information, put on those couple of buttons, and test it out. So this is the course that we're doing today. I'm going to skip ahead and look at my notes. Yes, so here we go. No, this is for the next step. So we can do these first steps just kind of right from here. So the first step that we're going to do is to create a page. And I'm doing this first because I want that URL, and I need to know where I'm sending people. And I'm going to need that in next steps, so I'm going to do that first. So let's see what that looks like. Within for the purposes of this, and to keep it very simple, our menu now has this signups area, and I'm going to add a page right here that will be sign up approval, and that's only going to be visible to the people, the managers of our system. So this can be done in the Plant an App menu under Pages. Now, your structure might be multi-level, and where the pages, maybe your menus are in deeper levels, but we're just going to create a new page right on the site root that's going to handle this. So this name is going to be Sign Up Approval. And I'm going to use that as the title as well. The only people that get to view this, we don't want to let our all users, which would be everybody on the internet, to look at this. The only people that are going to do it are administrators of our system and our developer roles and our managers. So we're going to just limit this page, who can view it, to people who are developing and people who are managers. And then in the same way, who can edit this? Well, our developer roles can edit this page, but our managers don't have any need to be able to edit to change the design of this form. So that's what we're deciding there. And so we'll create the page. Once the page is created and we go back to the front of our website and refresh, we can see that we have a sign up approval page now. And if we click into the page, this is going to be the URL where the page is. Just the act of going to the page makes this browser have that. I'm going to use this URL and go into an incognito browser just to show a little bit about the impact of what we just did. Notice that we're at our website, but that page is not visible to us. So you can't see it. So somebody who gets this email and clicks the link that we're going to generate, until they sign in, they're not going to even be able to see the page. That's the impact of setting those permissions to exclude all users and only allow managers in. All right, so this is our page, and so this is what we needed. And so I'm going to hold on to that for a moment and go back to this is done. We've created a private, unpublished, nobody gets to see it, controlled access kind of a page. And so now we have the URL for the page, and I'm just going to put it in here just so I have it, a nice long URL. And then we need to think about when somebody goes to this page to do a sign up approval, we want them to be taken directly to the URL, to the sign up that happened. And so with that, you can use the query string to pass that along. So for example, you can send something like ID equals and a value, and then this form is going to be able to read the query string and know what to do with it. So this is the design that we're going to use, where we say we're making up the fact that we're going to provide an ID, and so the form will have that to work with, and we'll fill in the blank. What is that ID? And now, and so that's the parameters that's going to identify that sign up. So now we have enough to work on the first half of the problem, to fix our existing form to send out an email that has a link. So let's find that. Here's our form, and we can either put it into edit mode or simply use the gear icon here. But we're going to be changing this join button to that now sends out the email to do what we need it to do, to have the email with a sign up link. I didn't invite earlier, but if there's any questions along the way, please use Q&A or chat and ask the questions. So here's our join button. We'll scroll on down and find the actions that are associated with it. We worked on the source statement. We created the sign up record. And then we're sending out an email, and we're displaying that, yeah, that all worked out. So the email is where we're going to make a change. And in the body of the email, we can say, currently it says, please add somebody to the email list. And so we're going to change this to say, please you don't say please approve. Let's say, well, please review this email list request, and we're going to provide the link. Now, the link, we got it here. It looks something like this is the pattern for where we want to send them. And so I'm just going to paste the link in here. I'm going to do it like 4 times to there. I got it where I wanted it. We could format that in a nicer way, but this will work. And instead of the this ID that we typed here was just a placeholder, we need to give the actual ID of the record that's the sign up record. And so let's take a look at that. We created the sign up here, and the output of that is called sign up ID. So when this action works, it fills the sign up ID token with an ID of the newly created record. So we can use that here. Instead of saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we can say bracket and sign up ID and close bracket. And now this email will have that on it. And so this, in a very rough fashion, completes our work. The email that goes out will now have this link on it. So let's see what this looks like. Let's get one triggered so we can get an email in to work with. So I'm going to refresh my form and fill in the blanks. Give them my phone number, and I'm going to say I am over 18, and I want to sign up for everything, and I own many of your products. I hit join. And it tells me that my submission is confirmed, and they're going to add me to the list. Now, let me find my mail. Great. So this is what happened as a result of that. I got a sign up form, and it says, please review the request. And it's put the ID of 3 in here, and it's a link ready to go. If I click this link in my email, it's going to take me to the page with the ID. We haven't done the form yet, so it doesn't do anything, but at least it's a good start. Okay. And just kind of to close the loop a little bit here. Yeah, I don't have it yet, so let's again back to the entities and sign up. If I look at this, we'll see that we have an ID of 3, and it's all the information that I just filled out, and it's in an unapproved state. So in the manual method, we could just come in here and hit edit. In the sign up approval, this is the one that we're going to want to do. All right, lots of things going on here. I'm going to. So now we're up to the spot where, we've sent the approval email out. We need to build the form. It's going to display information and give a couple of buttons. And so I've dug in a little bit more to the different steps that are required to this to build the form. So we need to read the sign-up data and make sure that that's a good record. We got to display some information. We'll add the buttons to approve or deny, and then do the work, actually update the data. So we're building a custom form from scratch that's going to do all these things. Let's see what it looks like. First of all, on a page that has approval, we're going to, on our approval page we've already created, we're going to put the form in edit mode and put the page in edit mode, and then add a form to the page. So this will be a little bit of a review on all the steps that we've done so far, because we're creating a new form. We've got to drop it someplace onto the page, and we'll pick manage. We are doing a blank form, so we'll start out that way. And there it is. So I like to name my form, so I'm going to name this as sign approval form. And I like to look at the settings first. I've said before, my preferences are to have the labels on the top. That's just a design consideration. So now, what is it that we want to display? Well, lots of the properties from our record. We go back to our entity and look at the properties. Lots of these properties we're going to want to display. For simplicity, I'm just going to pick the first three: the name, the email address, and the years of experience. But we could do them all. So we're going to have a spot for name, for email address, and for years of experience. So we'll add some fields. Name is going to be a text box. By the way, here's one that says obsolete. That's what I was talking about earlier. Another one that says obsolete. Steer away from those. So we're going to do a text box. This is going to be the name. And so it's got to get filled in somehow. We'll worry about that in a minute. Another one was email. So we'll add and keep this as an email field. And let's see, the other one was, so it was email address and years of experience. You don't have to name them exactly the same, but it's convenient if you do. So I'll do that. Email address, and add another one that was a number field. And call it years. So we have three fields, and we're going to want to, we can take a look and see what they look like so far. So we save and go back. And so now we see that we have our three fields. They're not laid out very nicely. There's also this pesky thing that happened automatically when I created the page that I don't really need. It's a HTML box that I'm not going to configure, so I'm just going to delete to get it out of our way. And now that I have the form module on the page, I don't need to be in edit mode anymore. So I'll just close that as well. So this is what our form looks like. This is our approval form so far. And the first thing we noticed is that it doesn't have any data in it. So let's solve getting data into it. And that's probably the most interesting part of what I'll say all day. So I'm going to go into our approval form and edit it using our gear icon. And we'll take a look at the events section of the form builder. There's lots of different times that you can do some actions. So when a page loads, for example, when a form, before a form gets initialized, which we call on pre-init, after it's initialized, there's these different times when you can put some actions and do things. And what we want to do is that when this form gets initialized, we want to go get some data. And the data that we want to get is that ID. So let's take care of that. If we filter this action list by signups, we see that there's a lot of different, all of our actions that were related to sign up that were created for us. One of them is called read sign up, and that's what we want to do. We want to read the sign up and get the data from it. And so I'll make a comment. sign up. We're always going to do it, so it doesn't need a condition. It's in our current database, so we don't need a connection string, but we need to tell it which ID to go out and get. And using the get token, which again gets things off of the query string, and we said it was going to be called ID. We said that here when we designed what the link was, we said it was going to be ID. So we'll use the get to retrieve that for us, and then once it does the work of retrieving it, where is it going to get put? Well, I'm just going to put it, I'm going to call it the sign up. This is a name that you can make up, and I'm going to call it the sign up, but this is the one that this is how we'll refer to all the fields that are part of the sign up in question. So this gets our data, and so now what do we do with it? Well, in the name, we can initialize this field using the initial value. We can initialize it to the sign up :name. That says whatever information was returned, that's where we want the value to come from. And we'll do the same thing for these other fields. So the initial value of email address is going to be not name, but email, the name of the field coming from the record. And again, I just for convenience matched it. I like to keep my confusion level down, so I match my field names same as the names in the database, but there's no requirement that you do so. And the initial value for this one in the same way is going to be not name, but years. So we can already test to see whether this works. So saving that much, and I see that I have some bad text in here, and I'm going to go fix it. So my initial value had 2 brackets. That's not going to work. It's just 1. Let's see if I made the same mistake everywhere. Nope. And nope. So we'll save again and try again. So we'll refresh the form. And in working with this form and the different ways that I've done it, I've lost the ID, that link from before, but we can just type it manually here in development. ID equals 3. And so now we're getting the values from, or at least 2 of the values, not both of them, but we got the name and the years of experience. So now we got to do a little debugging and figure out what I did wrong, why the email address isn't coming back. Another thing, we'll do a couple of things at once here. Notice that this allows entry into these fields, and that's not what we want. These fields should be locked down, and so we can take care of that as well. So first of all, I'm going to just double check my configuration. There's my link. There's page I don't need. This is stuff we need. So the name of it is called email space address, and by the time it makes it to the database, it's called email without a space address. So that's what we need to be recalling from. So let's see if we can find out why it didn't work the first time. So we edit the form and we see all right, Patrick, this is the spot where you tell me what I've done wrong.
Not seeing it there.
Okay. I'm not seeing it there either. So I am going to change this over to a text box just in case something about that is making it not restore. And the other thing, we'll skip past, because in the interest of time, we'll skip past actually If we can't figure that out quickly, we won't. But I'm going to make all these false on the enabled conditionally. So this is just hard coding to say that these fields will not be editable. They will not be enabled. And so this gives us the change that I was looking for. So once it's saved, we can refresh. There it is. Still don't know why that email address didn't come in. We'll figure that one out later. But now these fields are locked down. I can't click into them. And so now it's displaying the information that the approver needs to know to be able to approve it. And we're on to adding our buttons. So we go in and edit our form again. And just for convenience, I'm going to change the layout a little bit, where we'll put the name and the email address on one line. We'll shorten down the years of experience because it's uncomfortable to be the whole width of the screen. And then we'll go on and add a button. So the first button is going to be called Approve. And the actions that we want to do when they approve are to change the database and send an email. So we already know what record it's a sign-up record that we want to change. And so we want to just partially update the sign-up with the information that is different. So the ID that we're changing, again, is the same one we read in the first place, which is the get ID from the query string. And the change that we want to make is that the approval status is going to be approved. And we could also do another step. We're talking about another action that says that we could send the email. That's again, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip that, but that's the same thing that you saw earlier. We would just add a send email action and give the details, fill in the blanks. This button, the approve button, is going to be very similar to the deny button. And so I'm going to take advantage of a feature called clone field. This is going to give us a new button that we can just make changes to. So this is going to be the deny. Let's say reject. It's automatically going to bring in the partially update action that was there. So now we can just fill in the blank, and the approval status is going to be rejected. And so we've done kind of both steps at one time. And then finally, we'll take a look at the layout, and I'm going to put these two buttons right next to each other so that kind of makes sense. They get a approve or reject. And so let's save and take a look at what that looks like. So we should see our layout change to reflect the ways that I've rearranged it a little bit. But we should also see our new buttons. So yes, we see our fields, and we have two buttons, approve or reject. And cosmetically, let's test functionality first. If I click the approve button, and we didn't tell it to do anything else, so we don't see any confirmation on the screen that anything happened. But if we go back and look and refresh our signups, we can see that the status has changed to approve. If we use the reject button, we can, in the same way, refresh again and see that the status has changed to rejected. So very simply, we've made the changes. We've we've also accomplished our other objectives in that we've only revealed the fields that we wanted the approver to see, and they can't make changes to that. So again, we've kind of gone back to why did we do this in the first place? From a cosmetics, yes, sir.
Just so that we get this into the recording, I wanted to make sure that we correct that email address thing. And it seems that when you created the entity, the property, I'm sorry, you left the R out of address. So
Okay, and so this, having done that email address,
there you go. Yeah.
I think we can just change it here and get it to fix. So we'll correct that and override. Take the moment to do that. So thank you for proofreading me. See, it was worth your hour. So behind the scenes, the table is being corrected to have the property name will now have the value that we expect it to, and the value will then be available to us to retrieve. We would, when we're making a change, a fundamental change like that, name of the property, you would want to stop and think about where that might have been used in your low code and make sure that everything still works together. So I could imagine elsewhere when I did it last week, I might have used it without the R, and there's the possibility that needs some attention. So yep, we see before I refresh that it had the old look. When we refresh, it now has an R in it, and when we go to our approval and refresh that, this is exciting. It retrieves it correctly because it now it's retrieving it based on the name that it was actually created under. From a cosmetic standpoint, you might do some things like changing the colors of the button. So if we look at our buttons, there's some cosmetic choices that we allowed to default. So the button size, the button type. And so we might say that this is the primary button. This is the one we expect people to pick. And we could pick out a nice icon for that. The reject button is the unusual one, and so maybe that's a warning style button. This is just these types are going to give us a little bit different look and feel, and so that will maybe give a clue to the approver as to what you might expect them to do with this form. This demo system is running slower than I would hope today. Yep, so now we have primary color of the form. My page builder theme is purple, so we get a purple button and a yellow button for the warning one. Okay, and so we have built the form. We did everything except send the email, didn't get to that one. We've tested this normal case, the happy path. Somebody fills in a form, we get an email, they click the link, it works, they can approve it. It's all very straightforward. When you're designing a form, you need to stop and think about what other things happen. For example, if they click the link again, right now they can still approve or reject, so the link can be reused. That's what does happen. What should happen? You can think about that. There's other things that can come up, so you should test all the different kind of cases that are available. So with that, we've achieved our objective of a custom form that makes that limits the input, does some data manipulation, just some very simple data manipulation, and takes care of a specific task, and it's a great use case for why you might use a custom form. We hope that this set of lessons has been useful in helping you understand forms. We plan an advanced topic to counter the beginning topics that we've done for the last 4. The next Low Code Cafe will include, our plan is to tackle a somewhat advanced topic, and so be on the lookout for that. Until then, we thank you for joining us.